interesting overview, Prime Minister, of one of the most critical challenges facing the country. But I put to you what your critics say. They say you promised the country safety and security when seeking office, and that you are failing to deliver. And I suppose the more direct question is, what do you say to the men and women in tough communities across the country who have to be ducking gunshots and they live in fear literally every second that they could die?
Right. So, without question, that was not a promise, that was a commitment. And we remain absolutely committed to that. The kind of crime that we are facing is not just random, arbitrary street-level crime. There is intelligence behind criminality in Jamaica, meaning that there are criminals who sit down and plan and organize.
Legal Affairs Minister Marlene Malahoo Fort concludes the PNP have emboldened criminals.
The Bunting Golding-led PNP opposition have emboldened criminals to the point where they know their rights more than their wrongs.
This government is aware of that, and we would have seen that come out in testimony given in trials. I've had several discussions with the Chief of Defense Staff and the Minister of National Security, and we are monitoring this very closely. We have given certain instructions about the conduct of the security forces in those areas, and we expect that those directives will be properly and thoroughly executed to ensure that we preserve life and enhance the security of the citizens, which is...
Zones of special operations remain relevant and in the current fight to restore law and order in certain communities. Indeed, to borrow a phrase, the zones of special op may be the best example of what we call proximity policing. They're very
tactics, the tactics employed by the security forces in the zones. There is a perception that essentially there are sedentary checkpoints across the zones where, police and soldiers sit under a tent for many hours, well, on an ongoing basis, really. But there isn't really sufficient attention being paid to what may be going on in fairly close proximity to those checkpoints. And so you have flare-ups of intense violence, even in a community which has been under a zone for over 5 years. I mean, we've been hearing just recently the reports in Denham Town of serious violence, murders being committed, people being shot, and so on.
Now talk about domestic cause of death. On the sit down yourself. And now do nothing till somebody gets stabbed and dead out there. Yeah man, I'd like to sit down and talk. Yeah man. Yeah man. I'd like to sit down and talk. Solve. What do you mean so much people? What do you mean so much people? And this is the domestic thing with the people I'm talking about, and the sit down and the zoos of the man sit things out now, and nah do nothing. What do they do?
The zones of special operations remain relevant and in the current fight to restore law and order in certain communities. Indeed, to borrow a phrase, the zones of special op may be the best example of what we call proximity policing. They're very
Neighbor, I have the same problem. Neighbor, I have the same problem. I have the same problem. I have the same problem. I have the same problem, but I don't have a Zozo. I don't have a Zozo where I am. I don't have 5 years of public resources being poured into the community to uplift the community. So I'm expecting better results in Denham Town. And because it's nearer to my constituency, what happens there impacts my constituency. People do traverse from Denham Town and come into parts of my constituency. People in Denham Town reach out to me. In fact, recently have reached out to me, and I'm more than happy to work with their elected representative to try and help to sort out whatever issues there may be. But my concern is in relation to the tactics being deployed. Why do we not have more patrols, patrols on an ongoing basis so that the people see the security?
Just a minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just asking why we do not have a variation of the strategy to have more mobility in the communities on the part of the security forces, rather having them immobilized at checkpoints for hours on end. Many of them are on their phones, no doubt cramped with boredom because nothing is happening right there. But there are issues around in close proximity. They need to be mobile. They need to move around the communities and be seen so that there can be less, their activities or their sedentary lack of activities is less predictable. And, whether they can be supported by cameras, CCTV cameras, Jamaica Eye, can we see the rollout of those in these communities to be a further disincentive to the criminals? What about the use of drones to monitor what is happening, especially at times when there's a flare? It might not be all the time, because when things are quiet, it's not necessary. But when there's a descent into an episode which is going to result in reprisals and so on, unfortunately, what tactics can be brought to kind of keep the peace and calm in those communities? I think that the security tactics that are being employed are inadequate. And it kind of brings the zones into disrepute when you see a situation where a community that has had hundreds of millions of dollars expended on it, on social improvements, social transformation, way beyond what is available to other communities which are in similar situations, and yet still violence continues to be a problem there. One wonders, is this really working? And we want it to work. So I'm just questioning whether the security aspects of it couldn't be fine-tuned to make them more effective. So
the PNP has made unfair allegations regarding the actions of the security forces under the Special Crime Fighting Measure, adding the party's view on policing is outdated. The opposition in Parliament insists the SOE must not be the first resort for the government to curb crime, while again demanding a full crime plan.
We're not going to allow criminals to dictate our security response. It is obvious that there are attempts to challenge the security forces.
I don't know if you can get beaten bad. What's all you trying to get himself for now?
But when I get down here, a wickedness, wickedness and justice, justice for them, no wickedness that. What am I start doing you,
What do you use, man? Mowgli, shoot up 9 years. Enough for that, sorry, no.
soldier in a place and it's a gun. A soldier there, him a soldier and war a gun in a place and a soldier there. All them slackness here. This anti-wall is a keep up. This anti-wall is a keep up. War a gun. This anti-wall is a keep up. This anti-wall is a keep up, brother.
Hey, yo! Hey, hey!
don't come over clinic with my last child, my child, a 4-year-old. And get one dentist here with the cleaning teeth. Then say, no, go do it again. So we come back over. By the time I come over with the two of them, him and my stepson, but you can't cry some say I want them say soldier. When we look, I want one for them no police, be a soldier. That picture say them come for kill.
What time?
About half an hour ago. And then just do the same. All of who them take is not no 22. One of them just 22. They under 22 and then. While Kuba just out school, how much my subject just out Calabar. Them going in them beating them, jumping and especially big man soldier. Me I thought right time I come downstairs and murder that mistake. Blood up with the two of them head, some go start hold them. The girl, the soldier girl, grab me by my pants. And they move on that stuff. And the one of them start, so the one of them shoot me down. Chip up. I do them not just stop. And them beat my two better them in front of me. 16-year-old upstairs. She in front of yourself. All of them shit. I need to time at the house a while ago. And the gun shot them on fire. She don't go left or right. If the tell her to go left or right, she don't go left or right. I never ask to bring her.
How old is the child?
She's 2. She's 2 to the baby upstairs there. She not on the clothes. And at the yard she did a while ago. She don't know where to go. Right here. She had 2-year-old. A 2-year-old. You have water. I didn't have water. I'm going to have one who keep it. You have my body. You have my body. Oh, this is going to be too much. But you ask me and you know, what kind of sign this one? That them say you. You say which one of them I them chase? One and that. You don't know it's just like see there. Oh, we never write that in there. We think that it's
And I think everyone who wears a uniform and is under oath to serve and protect must understand that directive of the government. We must be serving and protecting our citizens. You can have confidence in your state. I know it's a hard thing to accept given the past of where we're coming from, but we can't continue to dwell in the past. Which is why we directed our budget to increase our Coast Guard capabilities. Never before in the history of Jamaica has the capabilities of the Coast Guard been so increased, and we're seeing the results of that. We have created the Maritime, Air and Cyber arm of the JDF, which is to be able to control, as I've said, those spaces. And we have increased our budget to the JCF. Never before have you seen so many police stations being repaired, rebuilt, or built new, equipment, technology. So I don't think the public questions whether or not the government has placed the resources into the fight against crime. and creating the national security cover for the country. And that was done under Plan Secure Jamaica. The challenge that we have now is that these investments take time to materialize. In the present and right now in the immediate, there is a problem. And the problem is that for the years of underinvestment in national security, the criminals have built up capacity in firearms, in organization of gangs, in control of communities, and in the financial resources, the means to commit crime in some areas of Jamaica in an almost unchallenged way. And the crime, as I've said on many occasions, it is over and above, not the capacity of the police. That's not the accurate term. It is over and above what policing is designed to address. In other words, if this level of crime existed in any other society, the police in those societies would have a challenge. Because what we are seeing borders on terrorism. What we are seeing is a deliberate attempt to drive fear into the population, deliberate attempts to undermine the state, to corrupt the state. And, you know, it is interesting that a part of the testimony that came out in some of the trials of the gangs is that the gang leader saw the murder rate going down and gave instructions that they must increase the rate, they must go and kill more people. So there is intelligence behind the criminal activity that is taking place. So the regular law enforcement methods are not going to immediately bring down the level of crime. So whenever there are criticisms leveled at the government strategy, the alternative is to say, we need more police, we need more soldiers, we need more boots on the ground. There has never been more boots on the ground in law enforcement in Jamaica than there is today. Never. This administration has done it. When we took over the administration of this country, the JDF was about 4,000 strong. Today the JDF is close to 8, and the objective is to get it up to about 10. We have expanded the manpower of law enforcement. What I'm particularly proud of on the Plan Secure Jamaica is the improvements that have been done to the infrastructure. Now, the JDF, I'm not going to say too much on the JDF. They have gotten their fair share.
There are over 7,000 men and women in the Jamaica Defense Force who come from communities just like yours.
Police numbers to increase over the next 2 years by 3,000, up to 14,000 plus.
There are over 7,000 men and women in the Jamaica Defense Force.
And you have over 100 gangs operating with the limited resources of our investigations and dynamic operations to go and interdict and arrest and so forth. So you see the magnitude of the problem. So we are investing in regular policing in order to maintain public order. So I want the country to understand that we are not saying that regular policing can't work. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that regular policing is designed to address a certain type and nature of criminal activity. But when the criminal activity that we have now reaches to the point where it could threaten the very existence of the state, it requires a different response from the state. It requires the state to arrange its resources and strategies in a different way in order to address that threat that is diminishing the assurance to the citizen that they would be able to enjoy their life and freedom and their assets.
There are over 7,000 men and women in the Jamaica Defense Force who...
And I'm saying that that arrangement requires certain powers to be given to the state.